Okay, sorry, internet people. Sorry, internet people, we are not live on YouTube today because something with Zoom. That's it. That's the answer to all the problems. Something with Zoom. So you're watching this time delayed. We are having a meeting of the OpenJS Foundation Standards Working Group. We've got our agenda up on issue number, Jory just lost it. How and why? Here we go. In our standards repo, issue number 139. We are going to start with announcements, as we usually do. We have a marketing committee call later this afternoon for those who might be interested in joining. We're talking about things we want to promote. Obviously one of which is OpenJS World. Register now. We've got Slack channels open for the event if you're interested in joining early ahead of time and talking about any of the topics. We'd love to see you there. If you want to really get involved and maybe help do a Q&A for some of the sessions, we're facilitating that as well. So you'll be able to watch all of the events after the keynotes go live, and then we've got scheduled times for people to chat with the speakers, and that's all up on the website on Sketch. So join us there and also in Slack and get ready for a rip-roaring good time on June 2nd. So that's that. Robin, anything else about OpenJS World that we wanted to highlight today?
Well, other than our program committee put together an amazing group of speakers, so check them out, openjsworld.com. Super proud of that program committee.
Great. +1. Cool. And then I think that's it for OpenJS meetings this week. I think it's kind of a light meeting. We do have the program committee meeting on Thursday, but we're really getting down to the last few days. Videos are due really soon for the speakers. Look sheepishly away, not at Joe, because we still have to do our video. So anyway, looking forward to seeing folks there. And I think that's it for announcements. Cool. Now moving into our agenda. The ad hoc meeting that is the first agenda item, issue number 132 or 137, ad hoc meeting, Spec Ed community group discussion with Marcos Caceres. That was on April 28th. I believe I reported on it last meeting to a smaller group, but this includes more people, I think, than last time, so it's worth going over it again. The community group is a sort of a subset of folks who are also interested in just spec production at the W3C. And what they are hoping to do is create a, thank you, lunch. They're looking to create a space to mentor and grow people into spec editors and help them teach help them learn the craft. We've been working on this adjacently in our issue 130 around education and onboarding resources. So there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration. And so I want to highlight that to folks who are interested in this space, that the Spec Ed CG was clarified on that call not to be W3C specific. So if there are things that are even JavaScript specific or some other web spec specific that doesn't fall under the W3C purview, but you think it's worth affiliating, this is kind of meant to be a space for that collaboration on those resources. So they want to do tutorials, workshops and stuff, and obviously to get started, they've got W3C experts, so it's sort of W3C specific, but at the moment, but they'd like to expand it. So I could see a lot of opportunity for us to help here. But that's sort of that's the highlight. And Jordan had some great concerns and questions last time. I think we got those largely addressed. Ben and Hemant, yeah, I don't think y'all were able to make it last time. you know, any questions or ideas or anything there? Cool.
Yeah, not necessarily at the moment, just seeing it really for the first time. So it looks really like an exciting opportunity.
Yeah, so the other thing that was shared was that he wants to build a website, a landing page, which could be something that we link to from our curated list of resources too. So I see this as good and additive. It's just more people kind of trying to focus on the problem. So many hands make light work, right? In theory. Cool. So I think that's it for this issue, and I will go ahead and remove the agenda label from this issue because I don't see that there's any need to keep it on here for now. And I'll probably close it. But oh, and the recordings on that if you wanted to go back and listen to the discussion. Cool. Right, close issue. All right. The next topic for today is, actually I'll skip to the discussion request because it's so closely related. Standards/education onboarding resources. This is issue number 130. And here we've started to collect a lot of things from folks we know, from us. We had a great chat last week about actually creating a new repo for this, migrating this issue over, and starting to collect two lists. One is the list of resources that we've already started on this issue. The second is a list of questions that we hope to answer for people arriving at such a site. Like, oh, you know, I have a question about how do I read the spec? Here's a list of resources that help you learn different specifications. That action item was on me. My mother-in-law has been in town. I've been behind. So I am sad to say that I didn't do that yet, but the action still stands.
Hey, Jory, we have our web designer at the LF ready to start building out the page. So I'm happy to help crank out that page content structure. You know, if you and I just want to offline, you know, work on it offline.
That'd be great because we don't want to block, and we'd love to kind of have this to share as part of OpenJS World. That's a place to highlight, even if it's MVP, right? Like this can be something that's relatively light for now.
No, I thought we had a really productive working session with y'all last time, so I think we're in a pretty good spot to get something up.
So I guess one question to the group, since we are going to have a little bit of time today, do we want to spend another few minutes talking about what some of those questions we'd like to answer are? There were some great ones last week, but we've got new folks who may have new questions or may have different experience that, you know, prompted different questions getting started. You know, would that be all right? Just take a few minutes hypothesizing questions. Cool. So we'd kind of started with kind of a couple of generic questions like how do I learn to read a spec? That was one. You know, where and how do I learn a process? So it was important for us that this particular resource didn't teach any specific, like the TC39 process is well documented on TC39's website. So let's, rather than try and replicate that data, send them to the canonical source. And then there were also some questions around that were a little bit more niche, but also very important, which is, you know, how do I understand sort of the IPR questions and issues that an SDO will undoubtedly confuse you with. Those sorts of things. Those were some of the key ones that I'm remembering off the top of my head. But
did we have those on a HackMD? I can't remember.
we should have those in our
Notes from
notes from last meeting. And you go see, did I add the, okay, that's from last month. Those are notes from last month. That doesn't work. Notes from 420. Here we go. Oh, I guess I didn't take good notes. Actually, I didn't take any notes. I suck.
You don't suck, Jory. Don't say that.
No, it's funny because I do have like a PR for other notes. It's like work in progress because I started taking notes in that meeting and then I have to go rewatch the video so I can finish taking notes for that.
I took some notes too, but it's in another binder. I'll pull them.
Yeah, let me see if we did put them in a HackMD just because it feels like something I would have done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't see it. So my guess is, oh, or did it not make? Do you know what? I think last week was one where the agenda issue didn't make properly for some reason, and so I had to make a temporary file. So I think I can find this in a minute. But anyway, so while I'm looking that up, let's ask ourselves what other questions we would have of, or we think that newcomers who might be interested in being a spec editor when they grow up would have.
Something I was just thinking about, I have to drop in just a couple minutes here, but something I was thinking about was there's like a serious, or not a serious, it's just a fact, but there's a lack of videos. So there's a lot of people who are learning via video these days. And within this space, I mean, there's within if you're learning JavaScript, there's tons of videos. If you're learning whatever, there's tons of videos for understanding how specs work, these topics, even the blogs and the things that were mentioned, like Alan's blog, your blog, Jory, other things. I mean, all these would make, wonderful opportunities to be able to turn into something that is that's concise and approachable, and just like to introduce you into the standards process via video. And that's something that I would be interested in helping out with over time, within the context of a site or whatever, like intro, like how do I look at a TC39 spec? How do I look at ECMA 262? How do I look at ECMA 402? What are those things? Like all that kind of stuff. So just something I'm thinking about at the moment, but it might be an opportunity. I mean, there's mostly just talks, on like, here's how we do ECMA, 402 or 262.
We could do like make it a series even, like we've
exactly.
been. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I like that idea.
Yeah. And
AMAs that are not branded AMAs anymore. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Oh,
and that. I mean, it doesn't even have to be like all in one person, it could be like a spread shot. Like we could, each individual could just like take a topic and make a video on it. And I mean, these days, like you just record it with your phone or whatever and put a little video together would be cool.
Yeah, those have been easy for us. We take the videos and we just timestamp them into topics and we just do a short little summary, a couple of like a blurb, and they've been really well received. So
that's awesome. I have to drop y'all, but I just wanted to say hello and I'm excited to be in the ring with y'all again.
Nice to have you back.
Welcome back.
Yeah, I started getting involved with Node, I18N, and the website project and things like that. And so I'm sort of wading back into the stream, and I'd like to, it's sort of I'm in a place where I can reestablish intent to do the liaison work that we talked about before with Unicode. I've already been talking with Stephen Loomis and people like that. So excited to talk about it more with y'all coming soon. And yeah, can't wait to see you next time.
I think we have an outstanding blog draft out.
We do. I think it's going to change a little bit since so much time has passed.
Okay.
It's not going to, I think instead of like a you know, like, hey, this just happened, which is kind of the way I was writing it before. It should be more of a like, did you know? You know, like, but yes, that's definitely an intention of mine.
Okay, well, we're going to follow up with you on that.
Please do. Yeah, I'm excited to get that out there and get people excited about it. Really quickly, I think something that's really important to communicate that blog is through that blog is pathways into how it works, like how we can, you know, through like the problems that users see, you know, with using like the part of the INTL object or whatever, like how does that translate into actually like going to people from Unicode, you know? It's like, how does that all correlate? What does Unicode even mean in the context? So anyways, I'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
But
Awesome.
yeah, all right, it's good to see y'all.
Take care.
Bye.
Hemant, you have your hand up, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Like as Ben mentioned about the spec reading process and how do we understand, I was trying to pitch about read spec with us to Ben. I just dropped a link to him. But the other thought that came into my mind, I would like to also hear Jordan's opinion on this, is would it be nice to have some kind of a core, kind of a lab where you could take a person through a process of editing a spec, or probably a repo which says, hey, step 1 to step 0 to step 7, like here are the things. There is a spec already, or there is a proposal, and how do you make a spec for this particular function? We can bake a hello world kind of an example and say, hey, if you were to translate this to spec, or if spec is getting translated to this, how would that happen? And also kind of give a playground where folks can go and edit, because the markdown, the language is a bit different than what it is, and like additions and deletions, how it's highlighted in the spec, and how do you see the existing spec, get the parts of that, and try to enhance the existing spec with a particular line you want to enhance it with your addition from a proposal we just made up for this exercise. Would that make sense? Would it make easier for folks to understand how to edit spec and probably, you know, enhance? It's just a thought that came into my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of different things people will want to learn, and what you're describing covers a few of them, and that sounds great. The only like gut reaction I have is like, I want to make sure that we don't do anything that overly indexes on encouraging enthusiasm in the absence of educating about the constraints. In other words, and I've talked about this before, but if someone is really excited about their language idea and they rush too far ahead before learning about the constraints that might be relevant, then they might end up feeling very frustrated and also costing the time of those who have to explain to them those constraints later. And so if we can find ways to teach them about things including those constraints before they can indulge their own enthusiasm, then I think that's a really successful, like that would be a great thing to do.
Nice.
I like that idea, and I agree with Jordan that it's sort of, it feels like, because, you know, kind of starting with where the work you've done and hearing Ben, it's like, Hemant, your work is like step 1, right? And then step 2 is sort of kind of what Ben is saying, which is everybody learns this information in different ways, and some like video and some like your podcast format and some like the articles. And so being able to say, oh, if you prefer tutorial videos, here's the path. If you prefer, you know, and then once the groundwork of, now you should understand the what, why, how, and the why not in some cases. Here's like a hello world version of a spec you can play with in order to learn web IDL or learn like process or language, you know, things. That feels like a good evolution of education for folks.
Yep, totally agree. This might be somewhere down the lane, but just an idea that came up that might be useful. And also probably having a framework that gives us clarity on things that Jordan mentioned, right? Like few things that you might rush and then you realize, hey, this was the constraint that we probably missed, or these are the cases that we didn't consider. If someone shouldn't reach that situation, probably we need a framework which says that, hey, these are the fundamental questions that you need to ask yourself before you have an idea that might be a proposal, right? So we don't have such a framework, and I do understand it's not an easy task to come up with, to generalize it or to standardize it, but I think we could give it a shot and see, hey, these are some of the questions that folks have asked themselves when they have proposed these, and some of them which reached to stage 4. These were the questions that were asked in the meetings. Try to come up with a pattern saying that, hey, these are the thought that needs to go into your mind even before you try to propose a feature.
Yeah, it's like, you're right. We can't do like a framework per se, because it just wouldn't work. But like guiding questions you should ask. Why hasn't this been done before? Like, is there, can you go back and ask if something like this has been proposed in the past, and why did the committee not take it up, or whatever? That would be great, like blog content too, just saying. So, but that, and also a great sort of guide to reference on our would-be website. Cool. I need to go get a charger because my laptop is about to die. So continue to come up with good ideas while I hopefully don't die.
Sounds like a life or death situation.
Very dramatic.
I know. Yeah.
Cool.
You know what I was thinking we would do? We can go through, take a cut, I think, at those questions that we did from our last meeting, and then share the document with this group who attended and those who attended last time, and just let you hack away on it and provide edits. And then we can start building. Always good to have something on paper. Yep. Sound good? Yep.
All right, back. Not dead.
Yeah. We were just saying maybe we take a stab at the content and the questions and the framework of the webpage, and then share it back with this group and for feedback, and then we can start moving forward.
That sounds good. And we can, we do have a quick and dirty template that we can use to get this up. And we may start with that, and then yeah.
Is there anything, you were talking about being creative on what we're calling it? Does anyone have a creative thought? Or would we lose people if we get too creative?
Standards bonanza.
Standardlandia.
I like bonanza just because, wasn't that like an old Western on TV and like the.
It was.
Yeah. So, that's kind of funny to me. Yeah, I don't know if we want to get too cute with names. I mean, I do want to get cute with names, but like, is it a good idea?
Descriptive is always good. I think we've called it internally, we've called it a wiki, we've called it a resource, we've called it a, I don't know.
Standard slice.
Standards what?
Standard slice or
Slice.
standard
Dot
or,
slice. And then, yeah, no, okay.
or standard dice, like the dice that we play with. Just a word fun.
Oh, dice, like
Yeah.
DICE.
DICE.
Take a bet.
I mean, there's also sort of like this educational, like component. So to me, I think of it a bit like a library, and we're sort of librarians. So
It could be a kitchen or a bookshelf, maybe.
a cookbook, which that was the whole thing for a while. Everybody was making, you know, such and such cookbook,
Yeah.
you know, React or Angular cookbooks, or, you know.
Just call them chapters, right?
Oh, that Brian would love that. So Brian Cardell, who's not on the call today, used to run a group called Chapters.io. Thanks, Mike Champion.
Thanks, Mike.
And it was more of like and he set them up around schools and stuff. So it was like, you know, university students to learn about and talk about specs and sort of find different opportunities in the platform. And he had a pretty active one in his hometown at least. This is sort of an extension, I think, of what he was trying to do, but you know, it's more online.
My old boss used to describe standards as chapters in a book as well. So. The standards library. What else is curated?
Art. Standards is an art form. Abstract art. Contemporary art. Brutalism is what it is, actually, if it were a movement. Yeah. Yeah, it's a commons area. That's a good one, Joe. Yeah. I do like the idea of it being like, because commons sort of speaks to like why we want standards, and that's sort of a good thing to remind people. That's another really important component to this educational project in my mind, is like reminding folks why standards in general, but web standards specifically are very important for us to create. And I think Joe also suggests community in the chat. I mean, one concern that I have about using that at present is just that the resource that we're talking about making at the moment is very static. Like we're not going to be, you know, able to help the folks who come, other than to say, here is a list of, here's your reading list or your watching list or your listening list, as the case may be.
And do kids still use Cliff Notes in school?
Internet. It's the same.
Standards for dummies, you know, those like really crappy yellow and black books, you know, they're like,
Yeah.
Well, if it's Harvard, it would be the gallery, right?
Arc notes, Cliff's notes, you know, standards notes.
Is there a
Crib sheet's an even
for-
older term, right?
Yeah.
Definitive guide to standards.
Normative references.
So creative. Anything along the JavaScript Landia theme, if we kind of stick with that concept of one world.
Think of it perhaps as like a geographic location, you know, standards country or something, standards.
United Nations of Web Standards. That has some other connotations depending on, you know, what you're, or ISO, you know, kind of like.
Don't want to be from another planet for sure.
The Intergalactic Standardization Resource List. That would be pretty funny.
Standards camp.
See, that would be fun. That'd be something I'd sign up. Can I be a camp counselor? You know, that would be fun. No
Hitchhiker's
kids
Guide.
would go there.
Hitchhiker's Guide to Standards.
That's fun. I like that.
The
And this
who
is sort of like the babble fish that goes in your ear, and like we're gonna help you.
Turn you into a sofa.
We could go also old school. Like they would have like the daily readers books, right? That kids would have. Like, so it's like your standards reader. That sort of referenced all these old textbooks that they used to do.
Standards Digest.
And that's sort of close to what the TC39 educator outreach group was working on, and they've sort of done standards in 2 minutes, which are super short explainers of very specific things. But this is a superset of that, right, where we're saying we're going to go more in depth on bigger topics, but it's closely related. I don't know if naming is the hardest thing.
It's fun to be clever, but even just like standards resources is really kind of, straight to the point.
Descriptive, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's harder. Mascots. Don't even get me started.
I've never
But
even.
what would the mascot be? That's a great question.
Yeah.
Well, after 20 years, Spider Monkey got their mascot finally. So we have a long way to go.
Yeah.
I think an alien camp counselor would kind of combine some of the thoughts here.
With spectacles to be
Yeah.
a librarian.
Yeah. A stack of books in their arm.
Just a really long, detailed agenda document would be. Does the TCQ app have a logo? It needs
I don't
one.
think so.
It would be like an aardvark or something random like that. Or no, a praying mantis, because Brian has praying manti. Whatever. Well, okay. Naming, in the long tradition of JavaScript, we will put off until the very last minute and then settle with ECMAScript.
What about a shed?
Until
Standard shed.
Yes, it's like it's a shed that's painted several colors,
Exactly.
like a rainbow colored shed to signal inclusivity.
Yeah.
Also, that's
We bike shedded this name long enough that we just called it a shed.
That's actually a great idea. But in the interim, we can at least start with the draft content and design from the LF team, and that'll get us started. So actions from last week, which I will actually do this week, is to make a new repository and transfer this issue over. We'll continue to brainstorm on questions, and because we want this to be a living thing, so keep adding your suggestions for resources and questions there, and we'll at least get started and see how. I think another thing is, with any product design, we want to get feedback from people. So at least launching with something small, we can start asking folks what they'd like to see there, what questions they'd like to see our group answer, and that could get us started. So
Great.
Okay, so that was that topic, and then the last issue for today was issue number 132, and that we kind of talked about in the private session earlier. So I think we are closed out on agenda items. Is there any other business for today? I should have asked this before when Ben and Mike were on the call, but any other business to highlight? I have one thing from the W3C. If not, the advisory board nominations were closed, and so there's an election that's live. They've sent out some candidate statements, and I think I shared those with everyone in Slack. I'll reshare them again. If you have any feelings on how and whether the OpenJS Foundation should vote in that election, please let me know. I think I have a couple weeks before our ballot is due on that. There are a few charters that are up for review, but none of them are really pertinent to our group, so we will not participate in those. But that's it from the W3C. Oh, and I have a meeting with an AB member on Thursday, and I'll learn a little bit more about their status, the legal entity stuff, which is ongoing and tangentially related to our group. So, all right, that's all the business I have, I think.
Cool.
For
All
today.
right. For today.
Yeah, for now. Okay, well, I will close our recording. Let me stop. As soon as that